Welcome back to the Good Green Home Show. Today we have a wonderful guest, Cherie Colburn, who is a children's author and a garden advocate. She's just wonderful all the way around in teaching people how to attract butterflies and have lovely gardens. Welcome to the show, Cherie.
Shauna, I appreciate you and Rich having me on.
Welcome, Cherie, and thank you for coming on the show. We're very excited, and I was telling Shauna before today's show that I'm interested in writing a children's book, a children's gardening book of my own, and she said, well, you're in luck because our guest, Cherie Colburn, has done just that, so I'm excited, and I need to get your book. I'm ashamed that I haven't read it yet, but I'm going to get that.
I don't hold any grudges, I promise. And I have 4 books, actually.
You do, several of them. In fact, why don't we talk about them real quick? Tell us, why you started writing children's books, specifically about gardening. I think they're wonderful. And also tell us more about the books themselves.
All right. I am a landscape designer, and I have been for 25 years. I do commercial and residential. And I do low maintenance, primarily native plants. That's my specialty in Texas. And I've lived all over Texas, so I know everything from Gulf Coast, where I am now, all the way to West Texas, where it's a very, very arid area. It's high desert.
Uh-huh.
And I went to school at Texas A&M, which is a little bit north of here, where I am, near Houston. Mm-hmm. So I've gardened all over the place.
Well, so you're an agricultural person, right? You went for the Texas A&M Aggies?
Aggie.
Yeah.
Well, I have gone to many schools. I married my junior year, and my husband is also a Texas Aggie, as is one of my daughters. And we were transferred, and so I went to many schools, but I did get to finish up landscape design at Texas A&M.
Wonderful.
But the main reason that I got into writing is, and I'd written for years for magazines. I've been writing for about 20 years for gardening magazines, but I got sick it's been almost 18 years now. And I was misdiagnosed with a fatal disease, eosinophilic gastroenteritis. And I left the doctor with how to spell it. And
wow.
I'm so thankful for the internet, because it told me that I should be dead at my age. I was in my 30s. And so I thought, this guy may be wrong. And just like with our environment, we are the advocates for our health. And I started doing research and thought, that's not what I have. That's not what's wrong with me. And I found out that I do have a number of pretty severe allergies, but it's not anything that I can't get up past. So I am always wanting to help people with their health. Pesticides are a huge issue for me. Mm-hmm. But during that time, a huge blessing came out of it, as often does with serious illness. And since I couldn't garden, I started writing about gardens. Oh. And one of the things that I wrote was from a dream that I had about a night garden. And in the dream, I was completely well. I recognized it later as probably some memories of my grandmother's night garden. And my book, Our Shadow Garden, came out of that. I gave that to MD Anderson Cancer Center, the children's art project there, and they made it into a book.
It's lovely, too, because you see all the children's art is contributed into the book. So instead of being illustrated, by an adult or an artist that's more professional in nature, it's the kids.
Oh, that's awesome.
It is awesome because I think that if you're a sick kid in a hospital, imagine how inspiring it would be to be thinking about gardens and growing and doing good things.
Mm-hmm. And the Children's Art Project at MD Anderson is just an incredible compilation of volunteers, paid artists, volunteer artists, and they all go together to work with the children. Now, I gave MD Anderson the book. All the proceeds from the book, 100% goes to MD Anderson, to Children's Art Project. And in fact, it pays for scholarships for the children who survive cancer, and many of them do now, thank the Lord. Mm-hmm. They get to go on to college, and this helps pay for college for them.
Oh. That's
It's
terrific.
really cool project. And so it was certainly a labor of love, and I really never intended necessarily for to become an author, because I was very happy doing landscape design and writing for magazines. But the company, the book company, the publisher that MD Anderson hired to do the book, then asked me what else I had. And so I pitched some other ideas to them, and they started making books.
Wonderful.
Wow.
I love the story because it's about taking something that was negative in your life and turning it around and making it inspiring and positive for
Absolutely.
other people.
I can certainly relate a lot to, you're talking about childhood cancer. My brother, who is actually now my business partner in our garden centers, had, when he was 10 years old, was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's T-cell lymphoma, and he had a tumor the size of a softball in his chest.
Wow.
And he went through, homeschooling during his chemotherapy and ended up beating it, went into remission, and actually played in high school football very successfully just a few years later, and then ended up joining the Army. We were surprised that they actually accepted him because of his cancer, but he is probably the toughest person you'll ever meet. From going through all of that, and
Not to take him, wouldn't he? I mean, he's already doing great battle.
yeah, absolutely, and he's just an inspiring person to be around from all the things that he's gone through in his life, and so being around that, it's close to my heart. Very, very happy with the work that you're doing. That sounds like there's some wonderful things going on.
So what have you discovered? What are several ways that you recommend to encourage children to be out in nature and be healthier while they're doing it?
Well, I mean, we're all born to be gardeners. And often what I find with children in doing school visits is, as parents, we often rob them of that. We discourage them. We tell them, don't get dirty, or stay in the house, and security reasons in cities, a lot of times we do have to be very careful. But everybody can find a patch of dirt somewhere, even if it's on their balcony with a pot. So everybody can find a patch of dirt. And certainly now, with the advent of so many community gardens and church gardens and school gardens, every child can get their hands dirty. And that's what we're meant to do. So it's really not encouraging the children as much as it is discouraging the parents
From sticking them in that label of don't get dirty. Well, I'll tell you what, in my house, it is total opposite. I'm always telling my girl, go out and get dirty, be a kid.
Yeah, I'm constantly kicking my kids out of the house, and not in a bad way. Get out there and play. It's a nice day. Get out there and play.
Exactly. And getting muddy. I mean, there's amazing things when you dig in your garden and pull out a few worms. My girl is a wormaholic. Like, she would collect them and play with them, and
she's got a worm addiction.
She has a worm addiction. It was total fun to.
Sounds like a bad thing on the surface, but it's probably
really
a good
wonderful.
thing.
She just loved to play in the dirt. Other girls, her friends, would come over to garden with us, and she'd have worms. They'd be all screaming and running, of course, and mine just loved it. It was so fun. And so gardening is the number one thing. And you've mentioned that you've gone to schools. How can we get more people to build school gardens? What are your ideas?
Well, I think it needs to come from the children. What I found in schools are most want to have a garden. They would love to have it. They love the idea of it, but it is work. And so you have to have adults in the school, not just parents, but also people who are working there, getting paid to be there. Because once a child leaves that school, and the parent usually leaves as well, then there's no one left. So you have to have buy-in from the school itself, or from someone, a neighbor. I know a number of schools where I've worked with schoolyard habitats. It's an older neighbor who's retired and has a vested interest in the community, wants to be around the children, and they are the ones that do it. But often it is a teacher, a librarian, someone in the school that is excited about it. And there are so many free resources. There are certainly wonderful books now about schoolyard habitats, about gardening and community. But there are also a lot of free resources. There are a lot of resources that encourage it within our government. We have a number of entities that will give you habitat status if you meet certain requirements. You get all kinds of free little books, and so it's usually not difficult to talk a school into it. What is difficult is making sure that they have the backbone of it there all the time in place, so that we can build it and they will come. But if they leave, it's gone.
I agree. How do we teach children stewardship? Stewardship of the garden, stewardship of nature when they're in a really young age. Ownership, I guess, more than anything else of nature.
Well, it's like anything else. If we have intimacy with something, and I'm saying for us, creation, if we ourselves are interested, become interested, take ownership in something, our children will see that. They want to mimic us. They want to do the same things that we do. And so a lot of it is watching us. What are we doing to be good stewards? And then that's why one of the reasons I started writing children's books is because I feel like if this becomes a natural part of them, I mean, I'm 54 years old, and my dad was a retired dentist, but he had greenhouses. And we grew up in plants. We were right in the middle of it. He had grown up a farmer on a tomato farm. And so that was natural for me. I didn't know any better. I didn't know that was work. That was just what we did. And I see a lot of people around me. And even when I was growing up, there were those that I call them the mow and blow generation, where they hire someone in, and it's, usually because they want to spend more time with their family. But why not spend that time with your family outside? And so when it becomes more natural and it's not something you pay someone else to do, then you will invest in it. And so that's why I wanted to, again, write children's books, because I feel like if I can catch them at an early enough age that interest is still there before it's squelched by adults, then they'll get out. I won't be able to stop them. I have to lock the deadbolt on my door for my grandson, who's 2, because he's outside. That's where he wants to go.
Oh, and Rich he has a newborn baby at home. So you got to get her. You got to get her rocking with the garden.
Oh, she will be, and her older sister's already into it, and her older sister was actually named after a Calabricoa flower, so she's got some big shoes to live up to, and we're doing the fairy garden thing this year.
Awesome.
So yeah.
I think I can get away with the fairy garden with my grandson. My husband may roll his eyes at that, but I sure would like to.
I got a suggestion for you.
What's that?
Approach it a little bit differently than a fairy garden. Call it a hobbit house, and then do some more, boy type things in there. I've actually seen people, kids, put their GI Joes into the fairy garden to get the boys in there. So it's actually kind of a fun twist on it.
I was thinking about making it a Lego land.
Ooh, that's a great idea.
Oh, that is terrific.
The Lego garden.
A Legoland garden. I would love that one, actually. Yeah. See, we talk about fairy gardens and all these little cutesy things, and I'm the one who's the most addicted to them. Forget the kids.
We have this big fairy garden display in the store, and one day, and it's a big, long river, and if you're watching online, we're going to show a picture of it right now. But there's actually somebody, we don't know how it happened, but the little green plastic army men? That one day, a bunch of them showed up in there, and there was the one guy, kind of like the sniper, and then there's it was funny. We just left it. We're like, all right, that's great.
Hearing about your brother, I think I might know who got involved in.
I think we know who did it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, what do you have going on this year, Cherie? Are you writing more books? What is your involvement with the community?
Well, I'm writing another book. I mentioned a while ago about going to schools. And when I do author visits, I love doing that. It's one of my favorite parts of my job. I get some rather unusual questions from the children. I usually ask that their teachers put it on a note card and give it to me beforehand, so I'm kind of prepared. Everything from how much do you make and are you rich, which the answer is no.
You look rich.
I have Rich and twins, and now I have Rich, who is another friend.
There you
All
go.
right.
But I love with the kids their spontaneity and their honesty. Parents, be afraid, because when your children are telling about their families, they are very honest.
Yes.
But one of the things that I often ask, and I do a number of programs, one on butterfly migration, and which is one of the big favorite with the younger children. But I often talk about, where do carrots come from? Where do just different plants that they eat?
Mm-hmm.
Often the answer that I get is from Kroger or H-E-B.
From the grocery store.
Exactly right. That's where carrots come from. And so one of the books that I'm working on now, I'm working on getting a publisher, is Above or Below, Where Does It Grow?
Oh, I love that idea.
You know, Cherie, I'd much rather answer the question, where do carrots come from, than where do babies come from? So that's good. That's a good starting point there.
Start with carrots.
And I have had that question, and my wife and I kind of look at each other like, quick, what do we do?
Panic.
Giving some advice as a parent and now a grandparent. Be sure that you're answering the question they are actually asking, because we often assume things. And so when they say, where do babies come from, they may not mean it the way that we're thinking.
Right.
Because we know the bold truth of it all.
Yes.
Exactly. Now, I love From Above and Below. That is a great concept, because like you said, it's same with chicken and it's vegetables and chicken and fish in the grocery store. My family, I grew up on a farm, and so we hunted and fished, and we always knew where meat came from, where vegetables came from. And I think it's so critical to children these days. They're confused. They're confused about what to eat, too, because a box of macaroni and cheese, and is what they're used to, and that's not right.
That's not.
That goes back to that investment, because when a child is growing their own carrots, they're more likely to eat them. They've invested time and effort and excitement into that end product. They haven't if you've picked it up off the grocery shelf. And in doing Above and Below, Where Does It Grow? What I was looking at is the children would say, okay, yeah, I know carrot comes from a farm, possibly, if it wasn't from the grocery store. But they had no idea if it grew on a tree or if it was a shrub. And so this way, and I'm using actual photographs of the plant in growth. So it's a side section showing the carrot under the ground. And then also as a prepared dish, what it would look like.
Oh, it's a great idea.
And then again, what it looks like in packaging, so that they can tie all of those together. Because in their minds, often they're so literal, they think it's grown as a package. Or, so they're so literal. I'm trying to show how, just like with water can be ice or rain or bath water, tying all of those things together so that they understand the cycle.
I think you should do this at your garden. Rich owns his own garden center, and I think this should be a children's series at your garden center, don't you?
It should be. I think, this is a great idea.
I do too.
That is a great.
Hey, we are so glad that you were able to come on our show. Our time's just about up. If you would like to mention the website for the hospital that you were talking about earlier, where you can go and make a donation or help out the children's hospital, that would be lovely.
Well, and you can also get the books from there. Now, the books are, everywhere else online. But when you do buy it from another source, of course, that bookstore or online source will get a portion of the proceeds. If you buy it from the hospital, 100% goes to the hospital.
Great.
And the web address is www.childrensart, all one word, .org. Childrensart.org.
All right. Well, thank you again for being with us, Cherie. We really learned a lot about kids and gardens, and thanks so much. Good luck with your gardening this season.
Thank you. Appreciate it. You guys also.
Thanks, Cherie.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, that was Cherie Colburn, and children's author, and she was giving us some great advice.
Great landscape. She's a landscaper originally, and I think that finding a way to connect children to the garden is the way to go.
Yeah, and don't make it seem like work. Make it seem like fun. You know, it's a privilege to get out in the garden. I think that was a great message.
Absolutely.
So we'll be back with the Good Green Home Show after a message from our sponsors.
Alsip Home and Nursery. Think outside the box store.
Do you want to stop garden insects before they become a problem? Bonide All Seasons Horticultural Spray is your answer and will stop your garden insects before they hatch. Early spraying smothers most insect eggs left behind by last year's plant-destroying insects. Bonide's All Season Horticultural Spray Oil will destroy insect eggs in early spring and, if used throughout the season, will control all stages of insects. Bonide All Season Spray Oil is recommended for use on shade trees, fruit trees, shrubs, roses, and ornamental plants. Bonide All Seasons Horticultural Spray Oil is easy to use and an all-natural product that can be used all season long. Bonide products are family-made in America. All Seasons Horticultural Spray Oil is available at your local hardware store, garden center, or farm feed store, or go to bonide.com for a retailer near you.